AG, Honorable Member Mohabir Anil Nandlall.
From one life member of Everest to another, sir. Ramjatan being a life member, so am I.
Sorry, AG, I should have mentioned AG also is in that illustrious group of having paid your membership dues for 25 years and is a life member too.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, cricket is our national sport. Cricket is the Caribbean #1 sporting activity. Cricket is an international sport. Cricket is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The 2020 format of the game has become now the most popular of the formats, and the pinnacle of that, the pinnacle tournament of that 2020 format is what we in Guyana and the rest of the Caribbean have the privilege to host. So, sir, by any standard, it is a mega event, and we should all feel privileged that it is happening here with us and in our lifetime. The last of such mega events was in 2007, as Mr. Ramjatan, the Honorable Member, recalled, when the Cricket World Cup 50 over competition was hosted in the Caribbean. This tournament, which is about to start, Mr. Speaker, will bring to the shores of the Caribbean hundreds of thousands of visitors. You have 20 teams who are participating. Each team will have its own entourage of officials, apart from players, medical staff, technical staff. Then you have the security personnel that they are traveling with. Then you have the international press that would be numbering hundreds who would be here. And then, of course, you have tens of thousands of fans who would be following their respective teams from right across the globe, in particular in countries or from countries such as India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Australia, England, etc. There is one difference between this tournament and that of 2007, in that in this tournament we have an added host, the United States of America, where matches are going to be played in 3 states, Florida, Texas, and New York. So you have another dimension of arrangements that have to be put in place. So the logistics that is going to be associated with and required of this undertaking would be a massive one. The Cricket World Cup bill is but only one component of the repertoire of arrangements that have to be put in place. This bill, sir, sets up the legislative framework under which the teams will operate, and that will govern the venues, etc. 6 countries in the Caribbean are hosting matches, but almost every Caribbean territory would be engaged in the logistic arrangements and other ancillary arrangements that have to be put in place. Jamaica, for example, is not a host country, but Jamaica will be one of the main transit points into the Caribbean because of its geographic location. The Honorable Subject Minister and the Minister of Home Affairs have dealt with the bill adequately, and there is no need for me, obviously, to go into clause by clause, but just to underscore a couple of important points, that this bill is identical to bills that are being passed across the Caribbean, in particular in the 6 territories. And those 6 territories are Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, Guyana, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Tobago. We maybe would be one of the last territories passing our legislation. And Mr. Speaker, the legislation obviously is one that would have had to have been approved by the ICC legal team, because it would have had to protect all the proprietary interests of the ICC in terms of their intellectual property, insignia, signs, etc. And it would have had to meet the arrangements that the ICC would consider its best practices by now, having hosted tournaments like this all over the world. So what you see in this bill is the standard practice of the ICC wherever they host tournaments. And it is important that we publicize the condition, the clauses of this bill, so that our population understand what their legal obligations are for this period, as it is established already that this is a sunset legislation that will come to an end on the 30th of June. So in that period, we have a host of obligations and a unique regulatory framework that will govern Guyana for the purpose of this tournament. There are some very peculiar rules in relation to the venue itself, and no doubt the Ministry of Sports would do intensive public awareness programs and campaigns to ensure that we don't offend that which we are passing as law in this bill. So a lot of the things that we are accustomed to when we go to see cricket at the stadium may not be permitted in this piece of legislation. Some of them are absolutely prohibited, some are restricted. So for example, on the restricted item list, which can be found at page 47 of the first schedule, page 47 of the bill, which consists of the first schedule, coolers, lunch boxes larger than 30 by 30 by 30 cm is a restricted item. Fold-up chairs, not intended for the monks. So fold-up chairs intended for the monks would be permissible, but that's the only place where you can take fold-up chairs. Large banners and flags, flag sticks above 1.6 meter in length. We have developed a culture of having huge flags and huge banners. The public will have to be apprised that these are restricted items. Then you have a list of prohibited items. Animals, well, I don't think animals are taken into the stadium generally. Bicycles are prohibited. Commercial video, photographic, audio equipment. Many of us perhaps walk with audio, video equipment. If they are commercial in nature, according to the schedule, they are prohibited. Dangerous items / weapons, including but not limited to firearms, explosives, knives, flares, fireworks, and laser pointers. I have seen what can be considered flares and fireworks at cricket. These are prohibited. I see them at dance hall concerts, in the precincts of the stadium. These are prohibited items. Drones, which seem to be now a common thing at sporting events. Drones or unmanned aerial vehicles are prohibited items. Glass bottles or metal cans. Of course, narcotics. Offensive or political signage. Don't wear your green shirt, Mahipal. It may be considered a political signage. I will wear my red shirt. Promotional or commercial material. Remember that we are giving over possession of the stadium, so to speak, to the ICC. They control all the signage, all the images, and you can only display what they permit you to display. So they are prohibiting all promotional or commercial material. So yes, of course, if you enter into commercial arrangements with them, which the bill permits, then I suppose you will be able to display your mark, your copyright, or your product. So that's one regime of rules that we will have to educate our population on. The purpose of this bill and the connecting arrangements is to collapse the Caribbean into one common domestic space. And that's the terminology that the ICC uses to describe the area where the tournament is going to be held. So all barriers that would prevent that holistic domestic space from being created would obviously be collapsed by the operation of this law and by other administrative arrangements to which I will refer shortly. So that is why you have all this visa-free travel and all the arrangements that have to be made for work permits and other permission licenses, etc., that may be required ordinarily. All of that would be collapsed to ensure that the entire hosting arena, consisting of the 6 countries, can truly be described as one common domestic space. You would recall, Honorable Member Ramjatan would recall in 2007 we had a whole slew of legislation. This time we only have one. It is not that those arrangements are not in place. So in the 2007 World Cup, we passed a law which we did not make a sunset law throughout the Caribbean, called a Visiting Forces Act of 2007. And that act remains permanently across the Caribbean, and it allows the free movement of our security forces and our discipline forces personnel. So we didn't have to pass a law to deal with security arrangements. That law and regulations made under that law will govern that aspect of the operations. Then it was decided at the level of the Legal Affairs Committee and the National Security Ministers of the Caribbean, as the Attorneys General and the Natural Security Ministers of the region, and a decision which the CARICOM heads accepted, that a large bundle of arrangements will be done administratively. So a whole host of immigration and other issues are not part of the legislative framework, but we have memoranda of understanding signed across the region, and other administrative mechanisms and devices that capture those aspects of the preparation. Only 2 days ago, our Commissioner of Police was in Barbados dealing with some of those arrangements. We met in Trinidad and concretized the terms of this bill and other aspects of the national security sector. So this bill is only part of a larger framework of arrangements that are being put into place for us to host this very important and mega event. Of course, as the Honorable Member Comrade Ramjatan said, and I believe other members have alluded to it, we have to be good hosts. We have to be gracious. We have to be hospitable, a characteristic for which we are known. And we have to behave, because some member, I believe the Honorable Figueroa said that millions of people will be viewing us on television. It's not millions. It would be billions of people. Because once India is playing, right there you have 1 billion viewers. Pakistan playing, Australia playing, England playing, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka. Billions of eyes are going to be on us in the Caribbean. So it's a grand showcase for us. Mr. Ramjatan, the Honorable Member, quoted a figure, 300 million US, that would flow into the Caribbean from this event. I don't know how accurate that is, but I don't doubt it. Because as I said at the beginning, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And this is one of the most premier events in the cricketing world. No doubt Guyana will reap economic and financial benefits. Our hotels are already booked. You can't get a room now in any of the hotels for the month of June. None. Try it. Houses, dozens of houses have already been rented out across the country because thousands of Guyanese are returning home from Canada and from the United States. I am telling you, I know I know of 60 persons coming from 2 buildings alone from New York. 60 from 1 street in New York. 2 or 3 buildings. The friends they're not living in 1 building, but the arrangements are being done in 2 houses in Richmond Hill. So, sir, and that's Guyanese, and we might be the smallest group of visitors. When you look at 20 teams who would be coming, I believe 12 of them already qualified. and then you have a competition for 8 more. So it's going to be a mega event, and I want to, on behalf of my colleague, the subject minister, thank the opposition for their support. And no, we must thank you when you take national positions. When you cut budget, I must criticize you. So I thank you very much, sir, and I thank you, honorable members.
Thank you.